Hello and a warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining me at this event from morning to light. I am your host, Sadie Bale, and this event was born out of my own grief journey. My husband passed away in a motorcycle accident in 2019, and when it happened, I found myself in an alien landscape. I landed there so suddenly. I didn't have a guidebook. I didn't have a map. Hell, I didn't even have a B&B booked. And I decided that I would like to help people who are mourning and in grief, to give them some hope, to bring some light back into their lives, that life can still be rich. There is life after your loved one dies. So, without further ado, let me introduce our first guest. His name is David Essel, and he's a master coach. He has also been described as the leader of the positive thinking movement, and he is a burst of energy and a blast of fresh air. I hope you enjoy this interview with him. Hello, everyone. It is my extreme pleasure to welcome you to the event From Morning to Light. And we're going to kick this off with an incredible guest. I have here with me David Essel. He is the leader of the positive thinking movement. He is also a master coach and a best-selling author. So welcome, David. It's so good to have you here.
Sadie, I've been looking forward to this, and we are going to have a blast. Thank you for inviting me to be part of your summit, and we're ready to rock.
Okay, great. So I'll kick off with a question about being the leader of the positive thinking movement. And I know that just recently your parents passed away. I'm really sorry about that. But so here this grief enters in. So here you are, leader of the positive thinking and grief, and they're two completely different worlds. Can you explain a little bit about how you navigated your grief journey? Because I think you must have done it differently to a lot of people.
Yeah, this is such a great question, Sadie. You know, we have a new book I'm writing right now, The Ultimate Guide to Grief, From Mourning, MOURNING, to Unconditional Love. And what we say in the book is that grieving at the highest level is a form of unconditional love. So our tears that come out are love, you know, our missing that person is love. Our desire to see them again is love. Our remembrance of what they taught us, in my case with my parents, you know, what they taught us or tried to teach us, Sadie, when I was a child. You know, I was a very difficult child, and I really didn't connect with my mom and dad until I was out of college, about 25. I had a lot of problems. I started my world of addiction at the age of 12, so I was not an easy child. But as I grew older, I created this most incredible connection with my mother and father. And I want to stop and say this. The world of grieving is very challenging because it's not linear for anyone. You know, you don't go A, B, C, D, E. That would be a linear grief process, right? And so it's, you know, it's A to C to Z to B to M to N and all these different directions. Now, you know, yeah, it's an emotional roller coaster right now. If you're watching me right now and you're saying, oh, well, David was fortunate, he had loving parents, and so his grief is different than mine, that could be true. And so, you know, I've taught a grief program, Sadie, for 30 years. And with the last 4 years of my mom and dad getting very sick, they were both in hospice for 4 years, which is a very long time. They were very ill for 4 years. I didn't realize that when I went through, and I'll explain the different grief between my mom and dad, but I didn't realize, you know, first of all, what that pain would be like. It's easy to counsel other people when you haven't gone through it. And then when you go through it, it blows your mind, you know, it really does. So when I work with people that did not have good relationships with a sibling or their parents, their grieving process is a little different. We encourage them to go through deep forgiveness first before they even think about the whole grieving process, because you can't grieve with anger or resentment. You can't go through the grieving process. So we teach people that. Now, for myself, Sadie, I didn't have the anger or the resentment against my mom and dad, but what shocked me was it took me 10 months with my mom before I could talk about her on a summit or a radio show or a television show without getting really hung up emotionally, because my mom was the one that never gave up on me. She was the one through all the addictions that stood by my side. I honored my mom by devoting my sobriety a long time ago to her. And it was one of the most beautiful things I was able to share with her, is how much I loved her and how she stayed with me. And as an adult, I finally got sober and I dedicated that to her. But it was 10 months of real intense, just what you did. The roller coaster was so intense with my mom. We had a very tight emotional friendship bond, mother-son relationship. It was extremely tight and very emotional. My dad was an accountant, so he wasn't as an emotional person as my mom was. But what I found with my dad and why the grieving was so different, my mom died of dementia. So the last 2 years of her life, she was not here mentally. We would get her for 15 minutes a day. And my brother and I live in a different state than where my mom and dad and my brother lived and my sister. So my brother would FaceTime me to talk to my mom for that 10 minutes a couple times a week that she was lucid. So even though the grieving period was more intense with my mom, I understood it was because our emotional bond was so tight. And then when I was able to move through it, I also understood one of the reasons it was so tough is that I didn't get a chance to be with my mom very much during her dying process because she wasn't here emotionally or mentally, so that was a tough grief. Now, my dad, who just passed away 2 months ago, exactly a year after my mother passed away, my dad who passed away, he was very ill physically, but he was completely connected mentally. So when he passed, I mean, up until 2 days before he passed, Sadie, I was having lucid conversations, telling him how much I loved him, telling him what he meant to me, telling him all the things that he did as a child that I want to make sure before he passes, he heard. So there was two totally different types of grieving, right? With my dad, it was only about a week ago, 2 months after his passing, that I can talk about him without having tears. And, tears may come today. And if they do, that's just a natural part of grieving. But here's the thing that I think is so beautiful about the grieving process. When I went through it for 4 years with both my parents, I found a key secret to grief. And that is that it's all about love, Sadie. We cry because we miss. We cry because we regret we don't have more time. Sometimes we cry because we feel guilty. Maybe we've done things we've never said we're sorry for, or we've said things that we never apologize for. So the grieving process is really about love. And that's what we're doing now with our course, which I totally rewrote. We're doing it with the new book that'll be out in a couple months. We're trying to let people know that there's a different way to look at grief. And Sadie, I promise with you, bottom of my heart, I never would know this if I didn't go through it myself in the way that I did.
Yeah, you're right, David. My husband died suddenly. There was no warning. So there was no time to say or do anything. But I'm also one of those fortunate ones that we were very affectionate with each other. So there was not a lot left unsaid. Yeah. So I think that is a different grieving process to someone who has unresolved issues.
Totally. And for the people that have unresolved issues, please be patient with yourself and work with a professional. This isn't stuff you can do on your own. This isn't something that you can go, well, what David said made sense. And I really never liked my mom and dad, but I'm going to go through and forgive them and then go through the grieving process. It's not that easy. You really do have to have a professional walking you hand by hand, which again is the reason that we're doing the book, because we want the book to walk people through what we believe, Sadie, and it's only our belief, it doesn't mean I'm right, but what we believe is the healthiest way to grieve. And I want to make this comment again. I've been through a lot in life. I was an addict for 30 years. I had a failed suicide attempt in 1990. There's been a lot of struggle that I've had, and people look at David Essel, as you said, the Mr. Motivation and Mr. Positivity, and all of that is true. You know, it's not like that's a fake part of David Essel, but I will tell you that the challenges have really made me the man that I am today. The challenges have made me the person that I am today, and the challenges have made me the counselor and author that I am today. So I will tell you that without those challenges, Sadie, I would not be able to touch lives the way we do. I would be speaking theoretically versus out of experience. And theory is fine, but it cannot match experience in life.
No, you're quite right there, David. You also speak about patterns. People have patterns of behavior, and these are linked to their beliefs. So when you're grieving, what happens to those patterns and those beliefs in your view?
Yeah, now that's a great question, because a lot of us don't even realize we have patterns or beliefs that could get in the way of grieving, right? If we've never lost a mom, a dad, a sister, or a brother, we may not know what our real beliefs are about grieving until it hits. And then we may go into, I have people that I've worked with that have never done the grieving process. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you a recent story. I worked with a woman whose mom died probably 30 years ago. She did not have a good relationship with her mother. She was angry 30 years later. She still hated her mother, and so when we were talking and I was working with her on a totally different topic, and one day something came up about grieving, and she said, "Oh my God, my mother died 30 years ago and I hate her still to this day." I said, "Oh my Lord." So she had a pattern that until she removed that hatred of her mother, she could never grieve effectively. So we took her through our course, and at the end of the course, she was writing love letters every day to her mom.
Wow.
Now, imagine this. Imagine what hatred does over 30 years when you carry it in the cells of your body. And something that a lot of people don't know, every negative emotion is carried within the physical body. So when we wonder, where does fibromyalgia come from, chronic fatigue syndrome, rheumatoid arthritis, quote unquote, regular arthritis, depression, anxiety, a lot of it is submerged emotions. So, this woman that I'm talking about, she had a really hard time in relationships. She had a hard time in friendships. She was filled with so much anger at her mother and so much resentment that it really did fill her with toxicity. So at the end of it, to know that she was writing letters of love to her mother shows us that she shattered her own belief system, shattered her own patterns of anger, rage, and resentment, and became free, Sadie. She became free.
But she had to forgive first. Is that the key, David?
Yeah. And, if you don't forgive, if you don't go through that work of forgiveness, and I'm glad you brought that up, I'm going to talk about forgiveness in a second. If you don't go through the real work of forgiveness, you'll never be free from that resentment, anger, rage, or whatever it might be. But here's a key. If you have someone who's alive or dead that you're really angry with, that you don't want to forgive, the first step to forgiveness is to write out all of your anger, not to share with the person, but to purge it, to vent it, in specific. So I had this woman writing, "Mom, I hated you when I was 6, when you made me do this. At 8, when you had me cut my hair like a little boy, I despised you. At 15, when you did this. At 19, when you made me marry this man that I didn't want to marry." So, she went through all of this anger and rage, and she got it out. Now, once you do that, Sadie, you're ready for forgiveness. But you're not ready for forgiveness if you still have anger, rage, resentment. Forgiveness is not lasting until you have a clean slate. Then you can go on to the forgiveness step.
Yeah. I know there's also the flip side of that. If someone has really been quite tough on you through your life, they've actually primed you and grown you to reach a certain level. And if you can get yourself to that point that you can see how they actually facilitated your growth, that opens up forgiveness and love.
Oh, unbelievable. I'm laughing right now because this reminds me of a basketball coach. I played basketball in college, and from the age of 6 until 22, it was my life. All I cared about was playing basketball. I had a high school coach I hated, right? He picked on me constantly. He pushed me. He made me do extra drills. I was 9th grade, freshman in high school. I couldn't stand him. His name was Coach Larry Miller. I'll never forget his name, right? He pushed me. He never gave me a compliment. The guy was tough as could be on me. When I transferred schools, I transferred because I couldn't stand him and I wanted to play basketball. The very first thing the coach said to me is, where did you learn that defensive style? Where did you learn that shooting technique? Where did you learn that passing technique? You know, and I'm sitting there looking at this new coach going, oh my God. And I said, well, from the last coach, he said, well, you had an exceptional coach. And I'm looking, I'm going to myself, I hated him. When I went to play basketball in college, the same thing happened. My coach, after the first practice, pulls me aside and goes, Essel, where the hell did you learn how to play defense like that? And then an hour later, he pulled me aside and said, Essel, who taught you how to shoot free throws like that? And it was Larry Miller. And so, you know, if Larry Miller happens to watch this right now, I love you, brother. You know, it was so funny because the guy I couldn't stand was the one that set me up for success, Sadie. So what you're saying is so true.
Yeah, it comes from the most surprising sources, and you don't put it together unless somebody points it out to you.
That's right. That's right. You know, another story on this that goes back to, you know, childhood. I worked with a woman, again, who couldn't stand her mother, and it had affected a lot of her relationships. And so when I started working with her, you know, I asked her what was going on. Well, her mother was schizophrenic and she was unmedicated. And this young girl was the oldest in the family. So as of age 8, she was responsible for her younger brothers and sisters to cook, to clean, to do their homework with them, to do their laundry. Mom was never there. Okay. So she hated her mother. So here she's in her 40s and I'm working with her. And we went through the whole anger exercise with her mother. And then at the end of it, I said this, I want you to write about every benefit that came out of your childhood. And Sadie, at first, she looked at me and said, David, I just wrote all of this anger. Like, where's the benefit? And I said, I don't know. Go home and write. You'll find it. Well, she was such an independent person that at 16, she opened her first business. Wow. At 22, she opened her second. At 30, she opened her third. And it was all because she was a self-sufficient, independent woman forced into that role at the age of 8, right? And then years later, she's looking back and she's scratching her head saying, I never thought of it like this. Like my mother set me up to be an independent, successful woman. So, you know, you're right. I mean, we never know where our teachers come from, but I tell this to everyone. Those teachers or coaches or parents that we had that we think were idiots and they were way too rough on us, there's something that we could take away from every interaction with a human being. But it takes maturity, honesty, vulnerability to be able to look in our own mirror and Sadie, to look for what was the good in my upbringing. You know, it reminds me, there's a basketball player in the USA. His name is Jimmy Butler. He plays for the Miami Heat. He was homeless at 12. He was kicked out of his house and he lived on the streets 12, 13, and 14. And he says during interviews is that created such determination and grittiness that no one drafted him in college. He played basketball in college and he was a walk-on. No one drafted him in the pros until like later on in the rounds. No one believed in him, but he believed in himself and he became an all-star, you know, like, so these things. And he says it was from being homeless as a teenager that created that grit, determination, and strength that he was never going to be put down again. He was never going to be in that kind of situation. And it paid off. Right now, I would not want to be in his situation, Sadie. I mean, I'm saying that this guy is tough as nails. I'm glad that I didn't have to go through that, but there are good things that happen out of tough situations for sure.
Yeah, you're right, David. I want to draw us back to your parents. You said something so intriguing to me when we spoke. You said that you've had visitations from them. And you thought it might be too far out there for our audience, but I don't think so, David. Can you tell me just a little bit about what you experienced?
Oh, I'll tell you, I've had 4 or 5 now visitations from my mom and dad. And I'll tell you the first one from my mom. It was so intense. So I'm laying in bed and I'm half asleep, half awake. And then all of a sudden I noticed that above me was like this opening in the room, and it was a long hallway. And I didn't know if it was like leading to an office or leading to whatever. So at first I thought I might be asleep and dreaming. And then, my friend that was with me, her head was on my chest and her head was going up and down. So I'm looking at this place, but I'm feeling her head move. So I know I'm grounded, right? I'm in two places at the same time. Some people call it astral travel. Some people call it lucid dreaming. I don't care about what the terminology was, but all of a sudden I see the screen go up and Jesus Christ is there.
Wow.
And I'm looking and I'm going, oh my God. And he's got this very calm look on his face. And I said, are you Jesus? Am I actually seeing Jesus Christ? And, his expression changed a little bit, but he didn't say anything. And I said, could you talk to me so I know it's you, and he just sort of like a slight smile, but didn't say anything. And then the screen went back down and I'm checking, on my friend's head going up and down on my chest. So I go, okay, I'm still here. I'm still in this world of consciousness. Then the screen goes up and my mom walks towards me. And I'm getting chills right now. It was so intense then, it still is right now.
Mm.
And I go, Mom, is that you? And she said, oh, David. And Sadie, that's what she used to say to me all the time. She used to welcome me and say, oh, David. It was like her way of loving me, her way of calming me. If I'd say, Mom, you're not gonna believe what happened. She'd go, oh, David, I'm just so happy for you. And so that's how she started the conversation, which I knew then it was my mom, right? Like that was our thing. And I go, Mom, I can't believe it. And she said, listen, she said, you worry way too much about me. Honey, I'm fine. I'm actually better than fine. I am doing so great and I'm with you always. I am always with you. And I want to show you something. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but a friend of mine made this for me. This is my mom. And this is what it says, if you can read it, and he made it's just beautiful. It says, I'll always be with you, David.
That's beautiful, David. What a lovely story. How did you know that was Jesus? Did you just feel that is Jesus?
Well, I could see. You could see that it was Jesus. You could just see, and the energy he put off was just so profound. He didn't say a word, and then when my mom was there, it was so warm and comforting. But I was, crying hysterically talking to her, and then she just kept saying, remember, you can feel me. I'm always in your heart. I never leave you.
That is so beautiful, David.
And
that's a gift.
Sadie,
That's a gift.
it was an incredible gift. And I remember, when then finally she said, I have to go. But please remember, I'm always there. And then the screen came down and then it was black. And I remember jumping up, going, oh my God, was that a lucid dream? Was I astral traveling? What was going on? And my friend who was with me looked at me and she said, you were somewhere else. And I said, no, I was right here. But the visitation was so profound, and Sadie, I will say this, there's a lot of people that would love to have that happen. And they've asked me over the last number of months, like, how did you do it? And how did it happen? And I don't have the answer for everyone. I can only tell you what I did. The moment my mom died, I started talking to her. And I get up early in the morning and I go out into my courtyard and I meditate and pray for 2 hours or more. And I would talk to her every morning. And then I built a garden for her. And it was this, fairly good sized garden with her. One of her favorite plants was hibiscus plants. And I just filled it with these gorgeous hibiscus plants. And so I think that, and then I write to her every night in a journal. I go, dear mom, now I say dear mom and dad, right? Because they're both gone. But when my mom passed, I would just write to her and say, Mom, I know you know what happened today, but I'm going to tell you anyway in this journal. And I'd write letters to her saying, Mom, you're not going to believe this happened. And then at the end, I would always say this, Sadie, I miss you more than you know. I love you so much. And please stay with me for the rest of my life. And I have that ability or that belief system that because of me setting the stage and welcoming her into my life, that she's with me constantly. I get advice from her all the time. I'll be sitting there going, I wonder what I should do about this. And then all of a sudden I can hear my mom's voice, When my dad passed a couple months ago, I made the garden bigger and I put plants in for him, you know? So I'm welcoming them. And the only advice I can give, and I don't know if this will work for anyone else or everyone else, but I really believe that we are never separate now. I didn't believe that before. I believe that the spirit went on. I don't believe that anymore, Sadie. I think as long as we want them here, they will stay for the rest of our mortal existence. And then once we leave, we're still with them. So we're never not with them. Like, this is something that I believe we need to be spreading the message more of. You know, people say, oh, I have no more, my mom passed, my dad passed, I'll never see them again until I'm in heaven. And the answer is no, you can have them right here. Are you willing to do the work? Are you willing to set the stage? Are you willing to invite them? And then the other thing is this: look for freaking signs, okay? Yes. Open your eyes. If you go online and you Google, when I see a cardinal, what does that mean regarding someone who's died? When I see a hawk, when I see a sparrow, when I see a blue jay, I mean, it'll blow your mind, the information that's out there. So I always have fed birds because my mom taught me as a little kid how to care for animals. She taught me so much. I mean, it's unbelievable what she did. So I've always, you know, had birds, but when my mom passed, I put out an extra bird feeder, right? So I have birds constantly coming. And every morning, and it happened this morning, I call to my mom and dad as cardinals. And I'll say, hey, mom and dad, now this is 5:36 in the morning. And I'll be sitting outside and I'll go, hey, you guys, whenever you're ready, come on and visit. And I'm not kidding you. 5 out of 7 days a week, they come between 6 and 8 o'clock. And it is so comforting, right? It's so beautiful to know. Now, there are skeptics in this world that'll tell me I'm making all this up, and that's okay. I don't even argue. I just go, that's your belief, that's fine. But the comfort that it's brought to me, I want other people to have too, if possible, Sadie. So I hope this story will help some people. And now what's happened, even though I had tears talking about my mom a couple minutes ago, I'll probably have tears for the rest of my life, quite frankly. But it's love. It's this intense, unconditional love for her and the understanding of what she did for me when she was alive. Gratitude to the 1 billionth degree, Sadie.
David, I hear what you're saying, but I want to encourage people to believe in the things they're saying and not to brush them off and say, oh, can't be real. It's a coincidence. There's no such thing as a coincidence. You talk about seeing birds. I've been walking up the mountains and there's snow everywhere and there are butterflies. I mean, there's no logical explanation, but every time I go walking, there are butterflies. It doesn't matter what time of year. They're always there.
And you know, Sadie, that butterflies are another sign of a loved one visiting us, you know? So, you know, go online for people who believe in what Sadie and I are saying, or people that don't. Both, I want everyone, go online and Google, like, what animals or what signs should I look for from a departed loved one? And you could read for years on the number of people that have stories up there, just like I'm sharing and Sadie is sharing with butterflies. You know, my sister is very connected with butterflies and my mom. And so, and dragonflies is the other thing. My sister is very connected to butterflies and dragonflies. So she sees them all the time, you know, and I think that it's exciting to know that we can go from mourning a loved one who is passed, mourning, to loving the loved one who is passed. What a different form of energy. What a different feeling. Now remember, you can love the person who's passed and still have tears. It's okay. And your tears can be tears of love. And you'll move, if you do the work, you'll move from tears of regret and sadness and maybe even anger at God that, you know, your loved one was taken, right? But if you keep doing the work that we're talking about and keep believing and read, fill your mind with what other people have experienced, and you'll find out millions of people have gone from the grief and sadness to the understanding of love. And when you get that in your mind, when you switch your belief system, wow, grieving becomes a totally different experience.
Yeah, you're right, David. we've nearly come to the end of our time, David. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Can you speak a little bit about the free gift that you're offering?
You know what, Sadie, I'm so excited to do this. And we have a program called Helping Americans Heal, but it really is helping the whole world to heal. It's absolutely free. It will not cost you a penny, because we wanted to put our money where my mouth is. And I have a big mouth. I talk all the time. But, you know, in 1990, I interviewed the late Dr. Wayne Dyer. Now, probably most people have heard of Wayne Dyer. And he and I became friends. And the very first time I interviewed him in 1990, I said that he was already a huge success back then. And I asked him for some advice, you know, like, what would you recommend to grow my business? And what would you recommend as me as a healer and a counselor to help more people? And his answer surprised me, Sadie. His answer was this: David, take something you believe strongly in your work, create an object out of it, a book, a newsletter, a CD, something, and give it away for free. And I remember looking at him saying, but that's my secrets, right? Those are the things I use in counseling. And he said, no, 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 give it away. So we created this program at our website, talkdavid.com, Helping Americans Heal. When you sign up, the very first thing you're going to get is our #1 best-selling book on positive thinking. Then every Monday, you'll receive an email with articles, interviews like the one Sadie and I are doing right now. You'll receive a meditation audio at no charge, a sleep audio at no charge, an annual subscription to an addiction recovery magazine at no charge, a financial freedom audio at no charge. So join Helping Americans and the World Heal at talkdavid.com and get all of this stuff for free. Because we realize with what the world has gone through in the last 3 years with the pandemic, we all need more help. Anxiety, depression, grief, relationships, weight gain, finance challenges, all kinds of challenges. So we put this free program together really to help the world. And I'm simply following one of my mentors, Wayne Dyer's advice: give it away for free.
Wow, that's amazing, David. That sounds like an incredible gift. I think I'm going to sign up for it.
Please do, Sadie.
Okay, thank you so much for speaking with us and telling us your personal journey with your parents. That's really special, David. Thank you.
You're welcome, Sadie. I love being with you today.
Thank you. Me too.